Hi everyone, this is Ramalinga Prasad Kuppa. Welcome to my channel, Pharma World. Today's topic is storage of materials as per GMP requirements. Storage of materials and intermediates is a critical aspect of pharmaceutical management. All input materials, including basic raw materials, intermediates, and other supporting materials for the manufacture, must be handled as per the requirements suitable and compatible for characteristics of the materials. Let us understand more about the storage conditions. Section 7.4 of ICH Q7 and 21 CFR Part 211.80 and 142. Section 7.4 deals with the requirements for API manufacturing and 21 CFR Part 211 for dosage form manufacturing. Section 7.40 prescribes materials should be handled and stored in a manner to prevent degradation, contamination, and cross contamination. This sounds like a simple statement, but it should be understood fully in a comprehensive way. It says materials must be handled and stored to prevent degradation, contamination, and cross contamination. There is a small difference between contamination and cross contamination. Contamination means mix up of same material with different batch number, whereas cross contamination means mix up with different material. Handled means that the materials must be checked for correct label, correct identity, correct quantity while receiving at the warehouse bay. The materials must be unloaded carefully without any damage, dedusted to make the container clean, stacked on a pallet neatly, batch-wise, identified with a unique internal code and a reference number, say a unique batch number or receipt number, etc. Stored means that the materials must be stored according to the storage conditions as per the characteristics of the material. Certain materials need to be stored at lower temperatures. A simple example is an ice cream cone is stored in a refrigerator before it is consumed. A potato chips packet will have to be stored at ambient temperature conditions. Obviously, this is to protect the characteristics of the material. This approach of storage at different temperature conditions will avoid degradation of the quality of the materials. In certain cases, there will be a requirement of monitoring and maintaining certain humidity conditions in addition to temperature conditions. Contamination can be avoided by storing each batch of material on a separate pallet away from the other batch materials. Separate storage areas for separate materials will avoid cross contamination. Use appropriate protective personal equipment like gloves, nose masks to handle the materials to prevent degradation, contamination, and cross contamination. This is to control contamination from human excreta. Also, it protects the person from any accidental exposure that could cause adverse impacts on the person handling the materials. Many basic raw materials are toxic in nature, to name a few: methanol and benzene, that are being used in the process of API manufacturing are really toxic. So it is necessary to protect the person handling such materials. Use appropriate storage conditions for materials as required by characteristics of the compound. As explained, the materials must be stored as per the storage requirements depending upon the characteristics of the material. Temperature sensitive materials have to be stored at appropriate lower temperatures. Certain materials are stored below 25 degrees Celsius or freezer temperatures of about 5 degrees Celsius. Storage conditions may be classified as store in tight containers, means the containers have to be tied firmly and stored at uncontrolled ambient temperature. Highly stable materials that are resistant for any exposure to higher temperatures and or uncontrolled humidity conditions for longer periods of storage can have these storage conditions claimed on the product label. Store in control room temperature below 25 degrees Celsius means the containers have to be tied firmly and stored at controlled room temperatures at 25 degrees Celsius plus or minus 2 degrees. Store in control room temperatures below 5 degrees Celsius means the containers have to be tied firmly and stored at control room temperature at 5 degrees Celsius plus or minus 3 degrees. For these storage conditions, additional requirements of limit for percent RH, keep away from moisture, wetness, keep in dry place, etc. are required. Keep in dry place means the relative humidity should be maintained between 30% and 60%. Light resistant materials must be stored away from direct light. Section 7.41 prescribes materials stored in fiber drums, bags, or boxes should be stored off the floor and, when appropriate, suitably spaced to permit cleaning and inspection. This section prescribes how the materials should be stacked for storage. Purpose is clear. Obviously, if the materials are stored on the floor, there is a potential for contamination. Off the floor means store such material containers on racks or pallets. This is to avoid accidental contamination when there is a spillage or water seepage into the storage areas. This will become a serious problem if the material is hygroscopic in nature, prone to absorb water very fast when stored in bags or corrugated cardboard boxes on the floor. If the materials are reactive and cause explosion, it is catastrophic. To name a few, sodium metal or methoxide salts are such types. Adequate space has to be provided for easy cleaning and inspection. This is also a clear requirement. Inspection means checking the physical status of the containers. This is to confirm the intactness of the containers during the quarantine stage before being used in the manufacturing process. Section 7.42 prescribes materials should be stored under conditions for a period that have no adverse effect on their quality and should normally be controlled so that the oldest stock is used first. This point says that material should be stored for a period. It means that the material should be stored until its expiry period is reached. Expiry date means that the material should be used in the process within that period only. Oldest stock obviously means that the material was received on the earlier date. Materials already in stock should be used first. Use materials within validity period. That means the materials have to be used within the expiry period. As explained, the materials should be used within its validity. The validity can be expiry date or retest date. First in, first out, FIFO, or first expiry, first out, FEFO system has to be followed for dispensing. This is to address usage of the oldest stock is used first. Any of these two systems may be used as a policy. Section 7.43 prescribes certain materials in suitable containers can be stored outdoors provided identifying labels remain legible and containers are appropriately cleaned before opening and use. Materials received in metal drums, tanks may be stored outdoors. Since they are exposed to uncontrolled atmosphere, there is a potential that the labels may be peeled off or faded away. So it is important that the labels are protected to ensure the identity of the materials. There is a class on storage of materials in the section 7.43. Certain solvents that are received in MS or HDP drums or even stored in huge above ground tanks in the premises can be stored outdoors with a controlled access. This is because since the materials are stored in strong containers and are not exposed to uncontrolled atmosphere and the containers are capable of protecting the materials from contamination. But since these materials are stored in open atmosphere, there is a potential to accumulate fine dust on the containers. So the system should be so designed that when the materials are issued to the manufacturing, the drums must be dedusted before opening. Since they are exposed to uncontrolled atmosphere, there is a possibility that the labels may get peeled off or defaced. So care should be taken that the identity with the unique control number is clear while issuing to the production. From time to time, the labels must be checked for data clearly visible on the labels. Also, since the materials are stored outdoors, it may accumulate dust over them. So it is necessary to clean the drums before being opened for dispensing. Section 7.44 prescribes rejected materials should be identified and controlled under a quarantine system designed to prevent their unauthorized use in the manufacturing. This point is important. Rejected material means it does not meet the quality specifications. Such materials, if used in the process, may lead to poor quality product. So all necessary controls must be exercised. It has to be identified unambiguously, clearly, with prominent red colored rejected labels. Red color indicates danger. So we have to be careful to avoid usage of such rejected materials in the process. It is important that the rejected materials be handled under lock and key system to avoid unauthorized use in the manufacturing. This is an obvious understanding. The lock and key system should be under authorized persons for further disposal activity. This is another important point which focuses on the final disposition of the rejected materials. The disposal activity should focus on few aspects of the rejected materials. If the failure is not critical and the process can take care of that, some correction may be made and used in the process under deviation and risk assessment. If the failure is major and cannot be used in the process, the material should be returned to the supplier. Not only the returning to the material, you should get report of investigation from supplier's end and proposed CAPA by the supplier to address this type of failure and a commitment not to supply such failed materials in future supplies. If these two procedures are not workable, then it may have to be destroyed using appropriate procedures. All these alternative salvaging procedures must be part of your policy or SOP. Section 10.10 of ICH Q7 prescribes facilities should be available for the storage of all materials under appropriate conditions. Example, control temperature and humidity when necessary. Records should be maintained of these conditions if they are critical for the maintenance of the material characteristics. Detailed, suitable facilities must be available for storage of different types of materials with appropriate storage temperature and humidity conditions with a pakka record. Anything done in GMP without a record is a rumor. It is considered as not done. Manual recording is okay, but there should not be any missing links in the data. If this system does not work properly, it is recommended to have data loggers for continuous data recording. The appropriate storage areas, refer slide number 3, have to be monitored by continuous recording of the conditions. Slide 3 has some basic storage conditions. You can have more appropriate storage conditions as per the characteristics of the product. Use of digital hygrometers where the day's minimum and maximum temperature and humidity for objective evidence of continuous monitoring is required. So the design will provide the data on minimum and maximum temperatures and humidity conditions for one full cycle of one day. Section 10.11 prescribes unless there is an alternative system to prevent the unintentional or unauthorized use of quarantined, rejected, returned, or recalled materials. Separate storage areas should be assigned for their temporary storage until the decision as to their future use has been taken. This point is important. Till the investigation and salvaging of the product, it is necessary to keep such materials in quarantine. System should be designed in such a way that unauthorized usage of such materials in the process is totally controlled. The controls could include an electronic control system. There should be separate storage areas for rejected, returned, or recalled materials. This separation is recommended because the rejected basic raw materials must be stored away from the market returns or recalled APIs or drug products. Basic raw materials can contaminate the APIs or drug products adversely. 21 CFR Part 211.80. This part of 21 CFR deals with the requirements for drug products. There shall be written procedures describing in sufficient detail the receipt, identification, storage, handling, sampling, testing and approval or rejection of components and drug product containers and closures. Such written procedures shall be followed. This is a brief prescription which should be understood exactly as prescribed in the parent guide ICH Q7. Components and drug product containers and closures shall at all times be handled and stored in a manner to prevent contamination. Components include APIs and inactive materials. Containers and closures for dosage forms differ very much when compared with the APIs. The APIs and inactive materials mostly are packed in a clear PE bag supported by another secondary packaging to protect the material inside the container. Whereas in dosage forms, the container takes a different role. Each container of the dosage form must be handled carefully to avoid any contamination. Closures include caps, plugs, etc. to seal the individual dosage form packages. So, the aspect of containers and closures for dosage forms is much more complex system and should be handled carefully. Bagged or boxed components of drug product containers or closures shall be stored off the floor and suitably spaced to permit cleaning and inspection. We know the content of this prescription. This requirement is exactly as required in section 7.41 of ICH Q7. Each container or grouping of containers for components or drug products containers or closures shall be identified with a distinctive code for each lot in each shipment received. This code shall be used in recording the disposition of each lot. Each lot shall be appropriately identified as to its status, that is, quarantined, approved, or rejected. This information is required to track the usage in the manufacturing. This information is also required for investigation in case of any failure of the product. Let us see the prescription under 21 CFR Part 211.142. Written procedures describing the warehousing of drug products shall be established and followed. They shall include quarantine of drug products before release by the Quality Control Unit. This section of 21 CFR Part 211 prescribes that all the drug products must be released only after evaluation and release by quality units. Storage of drug products under appropriate conditions of temperature, humidity, and light so that the identity, strength, quality, purity of the drug products are not affected. These conditions are like the conditions as prescribed in ICH Q7. I hope that this brief insight into the requirements as per ICH Q7 for APIs and 21 CFR Part 211 for drug products is understood well. Check whether these aspects are the part of your material management systems and procedures. Thanks for watching. For more videos, please do subscribe, like, and share. Also, please leave a message in the comments box for any further support. Thank you.